As you can see, joining us with our weekly take on political news from all levels of government, the one and only CTV's political commentator, Scott Reid. Give it up for Scott Reid, ladies and gentlemen.
There he is. Yeah, you're definitely the one and only Scott. There's no doubt. Yeah. What were you pointing at?
They flashed to the empty couch for a second.
I see.
I don't know if that was a
the
chirp
other
or
Scott
what.
Reid. Yeah, exactly.
Like my head.
Yeah. Okay. So Scott, let's talk about this. An interesting one. You know, guns in the Liberal government have been an interesting story, and the federal gun buyback really expanding here. We're going to get more details later today, though, from the Minister of Public Safety.
Yeah, and look, this thing is plastered with perception problems now as it launches today. So, and I say that for a couple of reasons. First of all, there's this strange event that happened, yesterday. We see this news story about the Minister of Public Safety caught on tape talking to a constituent. The constituent's like, I don't want to participate in this buyback program. He's like, it's all a bunch of bunk. It's just because we just do it for Quebec.
Oh my
gosh. So then he's sort of like, look, I apologize, but I'm a big believer in the program. It was sort of surreptitiously taped and then released by a gun lobby thing. And anyway, it's just messy. It's messy. So you got that perception issue. On top of that, a number of major police services have said they're not going to participate because it requires resources. So the OPP have said they're not going to participate. Danielle Smith in Alberta said she doesn't want police forces there. So today we'll get some answers maybe on how technically the program will be executed. But on top of that, I would tell you this from a political communication standpoint, where we're at on this crime issue. I find it puzzling that they would begin with the buyback program rather than bail reform. The Minister of Justice has said, we're going to come with some bail reform, try to crack down on this turnstile crime challenge that people talk about. But we're going to do that after the buyback program. I would reverse these things because I think they run the risk of signaling to people, this is how we think we combat crime. And what we know from public opinion surveys and research is that whether you like the buyback program or not, people do not think of it as a front-line combat of hard and violent crime. And so I really do think that today is going to be a very tricky announcement. We'll watch how the minister performs, and we'll watch how they execute on the program's details.
Because the argument every time we talk about these gun buybacks is like, gang members who are responsible for so many gun crimes aren't the ones turning in their guns, and that becomes the thing you hear.
And there are valid arguments on the other side of that, right? A lot of domestic crime occurs because somebody's got their dad or the grandpa's shotgun in the back, and all of a sudden, it escalates in, rural Ontario. So it isn't all just guns and gangs. But there is a real perception, particularly in the GTA, Lower Mainland and Vancouver, of organized gun crime, violent crime, and, I think you got to start with where people are, which is they want to see action on the things that matter most.
Okay. Turning to the provincial level, and I guess this is somewhat related in terms of, violent crimes, assault. Now, independent MPP Chris Scott been arrested on assault and assault with a weapon.
So, Conservative MPP narrowly won last year's election, narrowly won the riding in Sault Ste. Marie. Tough riding, big NDP Conservative battle in that riding. So we don't really know too many details, and we don't actually even need to go into it. But some sort of violent crime, using a weapon, he's been charged. And what's the relevance to all of this? Look, to be fair to the government, they moved rapidly.
I was going to say,
they did.
Boom, they cut. And that has been Ford's habit, right? If there's a controversy, there's a sincere question of concern, boom, they move quickly. But at the same time, this is breaking, just relating to the crime issue, we see, the Premier saying, here's my list of demands on how to deal with violent crime. Just a little bit awkward that he's dealing with this issue at the same time that he's dealing with
with everything else that's happening in the province right now, exactly. So, so we've talked about that here. The other interesting thing that, Scott, that's happened this week, of course, is these numbers about the municipal government. It was interesting. The city of Toronto itself kind of ran its own poll to see how satisfied Torontonians are. And it's interesting, the results, one thing, but also the timing. We're about a year out now from the next municipal election here.
Right.
What does this say to you about where Torontonians are at and how this could, play a role in the next year of campaigning?
So, look, it isn't universally gruesome news from this survey. Right? They're saying, 5%, general sort of satisfaction increase. We'll see. I mean, you can ask methodological questions about how accurately can you track 5%. Is that really statistically significant? But here is the thing that you can't ignore and that starts to play into next year's election. This is 53%. More than half of the respondents say they do not believe that the value of increased taxes is being manifested in better, more improved services. And, you get this talk to anybody.
Yep.
Yep.
Right? Traffic, the quality of the roads, right? How can I get around this city? And so this whole question of, is Toronto busted and broken? Can you move around the city? Does it function well? This, I think, is going to be a real challenge for the incumbent, Mayor Chow. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of race we have, who's up against her. But these are the issues that add one more year in, one more year of her being the incumbent, one more year of her wearing these challenges.
Yeah.
How's that going to play? And just to add a little spice to the recipe here, what if her opponent is the former mayor, John Tory, who then is seen as the incumbent, who's seen as the author of these challenges, right? Does she point to John Tory and go, well, hang on, man, you started these problems? Or does he point to her and go, no, you have intensified these challenges, and I'm required to fix it? So all of this is going to be super interesting. Issues like crime, issues like traffic, fundamentally the issue of, if we're going to raise taxes on people, do they get anything out of it? And is this city functional? That's going to be the watershed ballot question.
At a time when affordability is such a thing and every penny you spend, you want to see getting some value for it. So, yeah, that'll be really interesting to watch.
Like it's a bargain, right?
Yeah.
If I'm going to pay more taxes, I should see that something's getting better.
And yet
that's the trouble.
A lot of people, you know, that I speak to say, you know, Toronto, it's become a city for everyone and no one at the same time. So we'll see what happens.
Tough times.
Scott, we appreciate this. As always, look forward to chatting with you next week.
Am I someone or no one? I don't.
You're both to us.
You're everything, Scott.
More someone than no one, though.
More like
exactly.
no one.
All right, Scott, thank you.